Hello, could you help me grow this channel? Subscribing is totally free. Just one click below this video is all it takes.
They say you remember the sound right before a disaster, and I do. I remember the clink of my spoon against the champagne glass, the way everyone slowly quieted down, the way Josh smiled at me from across the table, his hand resting gently on my lower back like he always did when I was nervous. That dining room filled with 20-something family members and friends, with candles flickering against wine glasses and home-cooked platters scattered like a Thanksgiving preview, was supposed to be the place where I finally took center stage in my own life. I had waited, quite literally, for over a decade to speak the words I had rehearsed in my head so many times they felt like gospel. And as I stood there, heart full and trembling just a little, I thought for the first time in years that maybe, just maybe, this was going to be my moment. Josh and I had been together for almost 9 years, the kind of slow-burn relationship everyone respected, but quietly judged. When's he gonna put a ring on it? Does he not believe in marriage? You're too patient, Rachel. I heard it all, every Thanksgiving, every girls' night, every passive-aggressive Facebook comment from relatives I hadn't seen since the Bush administration. But when he finally proposed during our trip to Asheville, on a quiet morning hike, just the two of us, no flash mobs or drone cameras, it was so painfully sincere, I didn't even cry. I just laughed, nodded, and kissed him like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Because it was. So here I was, standing in front of my family, glass in hand, about to tell them just how much he meant to me, how hard we'd worked to stay together through job losses, miscarriages, and that long, awful year. We didn't talk to his mother. I wanted to say that love wasn't the flowers or the dates or even the ring. It was the Tuesday night fights and the Saturday morning coffee runs, and the way he held me when I couldn't hold myself. I wanted to say thank you to my parents, who helped us with rent when COVID hit, and to my best friend Carla, who practically bullied me into therapy when things got bad. I even had a line about Emily, my younger sister, about how she taught me what it means to speak your mind, to never apologize for taking up space. I had a line for her, a compliment, because I was trying to be gracious, even though part of me always knew she wouldn't do the same. I had just started my second sentence when it happened. I just found out I'm pregnant. The words crashed into the room like a car through a wall, abrupt, loud, and impossible to ignore. Chairs shifted, gasps echoed. My Aunt Marilyn literally screamed with joy. And before I even understood what was happening, my mother was out of her chair, wrapping Emily in her arms like she'd just come back from war. People stood, clapped, cried. My dad opened another bottle of wine. My uncle made a toast. Emily's boyfriend, Josh, I know, same name as my fiancé, just to keep things confusing, beamed like a damn lottery winner. And I just stood there, frozen, champagne glass still raised in a half toast no one remembered to finish. I don't know how long I stood there before I sat down, but I do remember the exact moment I knew no one was going to ask me to finish my speech. It was when Carla leaned over and whispered, "I'm so sorry," like someone had just died. And in a way, something had. The moment, my moment, gone. I smiled through it, I clinked glasses, I hugged Emily and said, "That's amazing," while her perfume made me nauseous and her smug smile made me want to scream. I watched my mother plan a spontaneous toast for the first grandchild, and heard my dad say something about how we should all gather for a gender reveal soon. I laughed at the right times. I nodded. I even helped slice the damn cake. But I didn't finish my speech. I didn't get to say what I wanted. And nobody, not one person, asked if I wanted to. Later that night, when the last of the dishes were put away and the wine buzz wore off, Josh and I sat in silence on our couch. He looked at me, eyes searching for what to say. And all I said was, "It's always her." And he knew what I meant. Because in every family story, every photo album, every milestone, it had always been Emily. Her dance recitals, her pageant wins, her perfect grades, her drama, her tears, her mistakes, her forgiveness. I was always the second act, the commercial break, the quiet filler scene between her explosions. We went to bed without talking much, the silence between us heavy but familiar. The next morning, I woke up early, brewed coffee, and sat down with my laptop. I didn't tell Josh what I was doing, and he didn't ask. I opened Canva, picked a clean, classic wedding invitation template, and started editing. New date, new location, smaller guest list. Just us and the people who actually see us. And as I hit post on the invite, captioned simply, "We can't wait to celebrate with you. Save the date." I stared at the calendar and smiled. The date I picked? October 14th, same day as Emily's gender reveal party. I didn't tag her, I didn't text her, I didn't even tell my mother. I just posted it, closed the laptop, and took a long sip of coffee, watching the comments roll in. Do you think that was petty? Was I being cruel? Or was I finally just done being invisible? Because for once in my life, I didn't want to share the spotlight. I wanted it all. In the hours that followed my post, I didn't open my phone once, not to check for reactions, not to see if anyone had noticed the date, and not to read what I already knew would be waiting for me in every family group chat and private message thread that had long ago devolved into battlegrounds of passive-aggressive commentary and unsolicited advice. I spent the day doing laundry, vacuuming the rug under the coffee table where Josh always spilled popcorn during movies, and scrubbing the kitchen sink until the steel shimmered like silver under the afternoon light. Domestic distractions that gave my hands something to do while my brain throbbed with adrenaline. A quiet satisfaction blooming in my chest, like something dangerous I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just about revenge, although I won't lie and pretend that it didn't taste sweet. It was about reclaiming something that had always been taken from me without permission, my timing, my space, my narrative. When I finally opened my phone that evening, the first thing I saw was Emily's comment under my wedding invite, just 6 little words that felt like the first swing in a long-coming brawl. "Are you serious right now, Rachel?" No punctuation, no smiley face, no attempt to soften the blow, just raw, stunned outrage. The kind that comes when someone who's always been center stage is suddenly handed a folding chair at the back of the room. And beneath her comment, a thread of responses that made my stomach tighten. My mom had replied with a heart emoji, and then a second comment. "We need to talk, sweetheart." As if this was a minor scheduling error, and not the collision course of 2 sisters, who had been silently at war since they could speak. The group chat lit up like a Christmas tree. Aunt Marilyn, always the loudest voice in any room, demanded I be the bigger person and reschedule out of respect for the baby, as if Emily's unborn child had more of a right to exist in the spotlight than my wedding, and as if Emily hadn't purposely hijacked my engagement announcement less than 24 hours ago. Uncle Rick chimed in with something about family unity and compromise, while my cousin Chelsea, who once eloped in Vegas and never told a soul for 5 years, privately messaged me with 3 words that almost made me cry from sheer validation, about damn time. But the real silence, the one that screamed loudest, was from my father, who said nothing at all, not in the comments, not in the group chat, not in a private text, nothing. And that silence hurt in a way I hadn't been prepared for, not because I expected him to take my side. He rarely did when Emily was involved, but because some part of me, however small, had hoped that maybe, just maybe, he would finally see me. Instead, I got a phone call from my mother. I answered on the 3rd ring, already bracing for the tone of disappointed diplomacy she always used when talking me out of something that might inconvenience Emily. She didn't waste time. "Rachel, honey, I understand you're upset, but this is too far. Can't you just change the date back? Emily's hormones are through the roof, and this is really hard on her." There it was, the script, the performance, the worn-out plea for peace that always ended with me folding, but not this time. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just said, "She made a choice in that room. I'm making mine now." My mother sighed like I was the one being difficult. "Sweetheart, a wedding is just one day. Family is forever." That line, that tired, overused platitude, snapped something in me that had been held together with emotional duct tape for years. "You know what's also just one day?" I said, voice low and cold. "Her gender reveal, so maybe we're even now." I hung up before she could reply, not because I didn't want to hear her response, but because I already knew it. I knew she would go to Emily's side, just like she always did, and I knew the next family gathering I attended, if I ever did, would be marked with stares, whispers, and carefully measured small talk. And I didn't care. Josh walked in from the balcony, where he'd been avoiding the drama like the plague, and looked at me with that same patient, steady expression that had kept me anchored through so many other storms. He didn't say, "Are you sure?" He didn't ask if I regretted it. He just wrapped his arms around me, and for the first time in days, I let myself breathe. The next few weeks were a blur of logistical reshuffling. We found a new venue, an old vineyard 2 towns over that had been hit hard during the pandemic and was offering deep discounts for short-notice bookings. It was smaller, quieter, and somehow perfect. Carla stepped up as my unofficial planner, and together we whittled down the guest list to the people who had called, texted, or stood by us during the last few years, the ones who didn't need an invitation to show up and didn't need a reason to care. We mailed new invitations, we posted an update, and still I never once mentioned Emily's name, but she wasn't quiet. She posted a photo of her ultrasound with the caption, "October 14th can't come soon enough. Can't wait to celebrate with everyone who truly matters." It was subtle, sharp, and as pointed as a blade. The likes rolled in, the comments praised her glow, and I watched it all without reacting because I knew that the louder she got, the more people would start asking questions. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to scream. I just wanted her to feel what I had felt that night at dinner. Irrelevant. And slowly I could see it working. People started asking about the overlap. They started noticing the date. Friends who didn't know the backstory messaged me privately, confused. And while I never offered an explanation, I also never corrected their assumptions. Let them guess. Let them wonder who started it. Because I wasn't interested in telling the story anymore. I was interested in rewriting it. And Emily, she had no idea what was coming next. The days that followed were a slow, simmering kind of chaos. The kind you don't see coming in explosions but feel growing in small, quiet cracks. Like the way glass trembles before it breaks. Like the way air thickens right before a storm rolls in. At first, it was subtle, family group chats becoming quiet. Where once they had been noisy, a few relatives who had gushed about my engagement suddenly going silent, and mutual friends hesitating when I brought up the wedding as if the mere mention of the event carried some contagious strain of awkwardness no one wanted to catch. But beneath the silence, there was movement, a slow creeping shift in energy, as if lines had been drawn in the sand and no one wanted to be the first to step across. And in the center of it all stood Emily, loud, radiant, and increasingly desperate for control. It started with a new post. One of those curated, overexposed Instagram photos, with her standing in a flowing white dress, hand cradling a still invisible bump, the caption reading, "This little one is already so loved, so blessed to share this moment with the people who've supported me every step of the way." No mention of names, no direct accusations, but the implication hung thick in the air, undeniable, sharp, and strategically timed to coincide with the announcement of her gender reveal event. Complete with a custom logo, pastel invites, and a whole Facebook event that made it clear. Her day would be the gathering that matters. That was the word she used. Matters. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. But not everyone stayed silent. Chelsea, my cousin with the no-filter personality and a soft spot for underdogs, left a comment under the post. "Pretty bold to plan something the same day as your sister's wedding, just saying." It was like lighting a match in a gas-soaked room. Within hours, Emily had deleted the comment and posted a story about toxic people being cut from her life for the baby's peace, as if she were some kind of martyr, sacrificing relationships for unborn innocence. and not the one who had thrown the first punch without warning. The message wasn't for me, not really. It was for the audience she'd been grooming her whole life, the family, the friends, the acquaintances who had always seen her as the sweet, chaotic little sister who meant well even when she caused disaster. But this time, the disaster wasn't going away quietly. The next evening, as I was walking out of the hospital after a 12-hour shift that included a code blue, a combative psych patient, and 3 missed lunch breaks, I found her waiting for me in the parking lot. Arms crossed, eyes red, face flushed from either anger or tears. I couldn't tell which. The moment I saw her, I knew this wasn't going to be civil. Emily didn't come for closure. She came for a scene. "You had to pick that day," she started. No greeting, no preamble, just raw accusation wrapped in false confusion. "Do you hate me that much?" I stood there, keys in hand, too exhausted to give her anything but the truth. "You made your choice first," I said. And I said it without venom, without malice, just a quiet certainty that landed like a slap. "You stood up during my engagement speech and made it about you, and no one even noticed." Her lip quivered, and for a second, I saw the little girl version of her, lost, fragile, searching for a lifeline, but it vanished just as quickly, replaced by the same righteous anger she'd used all her life to justify whatever fire she'd started. "I didn't plan that, Rachel. I didn't know how to say it. It just came out. I was overwhelmed and scared and happy and—" She paused, wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. "And I thought you'd be happy for me." That part stung, not because it was true, but because it sounded like it could have been. I might have been happy if she hadn't picked that moment, if she hadn't let it spiral into a circus while I sat there, invisible at my own celebration. But instead of saying that, I just met her gaze and said the one thing I knew she wouldn't expect. "You're not the victim here." Her breath caught. She blinked fast. "You think I'm trying to hurt you?" "I don't think you even think about me at all," I replied. "And that's the problem?" She left after that, muttering something about not wanting to raise her child around bitterness, storming off like she was in a soap opera, leaving me standing under the dim orange glow of the parking lot lights, wondering if there was ever going to be a version of this where she understood what she'd done. I didn't drive home right away. I sat in my car for a long time, watching people come and go, their lives unfolding in normal, unremarkable rhythms, and I wondered how many of them were also carrying the weight of someone else's spotlight pressing down on their joy. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee and scrolled through my email, I saw it, a forwarded message from my aunt. The subject line in all caps. "Family wedding boycott?" My stomach turned cold before I even clicked, already knowing what was inside. And sure enough, there it was. A chain of emails between my mother, 2 of my aunts, and a couple of cousins discussing the tension between me and Emily, debating whether they should attend my wedding or stand in solidarity with her, with one even writing, "It's not like Rachel hasn't always been distant." That one burned, more than I care to admit, because I knew it wasn't entirely wrong. I had been distant, but I had been distant in the way people become after years of being told their feelings are too much, their needs too inconvenient, their victories too small to be celebrated. I didn't reply to the email. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I sent a private message to every single person I wanted at my wedding. Short, direct, personal. No mass invites, no passive-aggressive guilt trips. I told them I understood if they had to choose, and I told them I hoped they would choose joy. Because for once, this wasn't about Emily. This was about me. And I wasn't going to fight for attention anymore. I was going to stand in my own damn light. There is a particular kind of silence that settles in a room right before a wedding. Not the reverent kind filled with awe and love, but a denser, heavier one, packed with the weight of unspoken absences and the visible gaps between rows of chairs that should have been filled by faces you've known your entire life. Faces you expected to see smiling, crying, cheering. Faces that had watched you grow, stumble, get back up, and finally arrive at this moment. That morning, standing behind the curtain at the vineyard we'd managed to book in just under a month, I stared out at those seats, dressed in white ribbons and petals, and counted the people who weren't there. Not because they couldn't come, not because of weather or distance or illness, but because they had made a choice, an intentional, painful choice, to prioritize another party, another person, another story over mine. And despite everything I had told myself in the weeks leading up to that day, that it didn't matter, that I was doing this for me, that I didn't need their approval, I felt it, like a bruise pressed too hard. I felt every single no-show in my bones. But here's the thing about pain. It doesn't mean you stop. It means you move forward with it in your chest, reshaping your expectations in real time. So I didn't cry. I didn't ask questions. I adjusted my veil, took one last breath, and walked out into that sun-drenched garden with a spine straighter than it had been in years, and a smile that wasn't forced but fiercely earned. Because for every empty seat, there was someone who had chosen to be there. Carla, in a burgundy dress she picked out just for me, holding back tears as she mouthed, "You're stunning," from the front row. My college roommate Nadia, who had flown in from Seattle with her 3-month-old, just to be part of this moment. And Josh's uncle Dan, who gave me a wink and a thumbs up like I was walking onto a baseball field, not into a marriage. These were my people, not just present, but fully with me. Josh looked at me the way every woman hopes to be looked at on her wedding day. Not just with love, but with relief. Like after everything we'd been through, he couldn't believe we actually made it. He didn't care about the drama, the split guest list, or even the fact that his own mother had politely declined last minute, claiming she didn't want to get in the middle of family politics. He cared that I was walking toward him, that I chose him again and again, and that we were finally here. The ceremony was simple, but it felt sacred. No elaborate rituals, no over-the-top declarations, just honest, tearful vows, exchanged under a trellis of late-season roses, our hands trembling and fingers intertwined as we promised to keep choosing each other, no matter who else showed up or didn't. There were no interruptions, no dramatic exits, no last-minute objections, just us. During the reception, Carla gave a speech that stole the air from the room, not because it was poetic or perfectly structured, but because it was raw. She talked about friendship, about loyalty, about watching someone you love constantly get overlooked and still keep showing up for everyone else. She ended with, "Today, Rachel took her space back, and I've never been prouder to stand beside her." People clapped, some cried. And I sat there holding Josh's hand under the table, thinking that maybe, just maybe, this was what healing looked like. Not total resolution, not a happy family circle holding hands, but a quiet reckoning with what you've endured and a decision to keep going anyway. Later, as the sun dipped low and turned the sky the color of burnt peach, Josh and I walked out to the hill behind the vineyard for pictures. The wind was soft, the light perfect, and for a moment, everything was still. He looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell him that this day had exceeded my expectations, that it was the best day of my life, and in many ways, it was. But instead I told him the truth, because that's what we promised. "I'm a little sad," I admitted, "but I'm not broken, and that's new." Back inside, the dance floor had come alive with people who loved us, not out of obligation, but out of choice. We danced, we laughed, and we toasted to new beginnings. At one point, Carla pulled me aside, holding up her phone to show me something she clearly couldn't wait to reveal. A post from Emily's gender reveal party. It had rained. Not a drizzle, not a light shower, but a full-blown downpour that had flooded the backyard setup, soaked the balloon arch, and left guests huddling under the tent, which had partially collapsed under the weight of the water. The photos were forced smiles, smeared makeup, soggy decorations. The video of the actual gender reveal was chaotic, with the powder cannons barely firing and Emily shrieking as her shoes sank into the mud. Carla whispered, "I swear I didn't laugh until I saw the third video." And I couldn't help it. I laughed too. Not because I was cruel, but because karma has a way of showing up when you stop waiting for it. I posted one picture that night, just one, me and Josh, forehead to forehead, laughing like we hadn't in months. The caption was simple: "The best day of our lives, no distractions, just love." I didn't tag anyone. I didn't mention Emily. I didn't need to. And somewhere in a different house, I imagined she saw it, just like I had seen hers. And maybe, just maybe, she finally understood what it felt like to be the one on the outside, watching someone else's joy unfold without being able to interrupt it. The messages started trickling in after that. Some congratulations, some apologies, a few confused questions about why so many family members had missed the wedding. I didn't respond to any of them, because for the first time in my life, I didn't need to explain myself. I just needed to live the truth I'd finally chosen. The message arrived late, well past midnight, long after the last plate had been cleared, the final toast made, and the borrowed string lights wound back into their boxes by friends too loyal to leave without helping. I had just slipped out of my dress, now wrinkled and wine-stained in one spot. No one else noticed but me, and was sitting cross-legged on the edge of the hotel bed. Hair tangled and makeup faded, the adrenaline wearing off and leaving behind a kind of silence that didn't feel empty so much as numb. My phone buzzed once, the light blinking like it knew I wasn't ready. But I picked it up anyway, expecting a last-minute congratulations, maybe a late RSVP apology, or one of those half-hearted "sorry I missed it" messages from someone who never really meant to come. Instead, it was from Emily. Just a sentence. No greeting, no preamble. "We need to talk. It's serious." I stared at the screen, letting the words hang there like smoke. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, letting the message rot in digital limbo the way so many of mine had. In the past, when she couldn't be bothered to respond, too wrapped in her own chaos to acknowledge anyone else's existence. But there was something in the way she phrased it, that odd absence of exclamation marks, the hollow tone that made me pause. I handed the phone to Josh and watched his face as he read it, his brow furrowing in that way it always did when something didn't sit right. "You think it's real?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just stood, slipped on the hotel's white robe, and walked over to the window where the early light was starting to stretch across the parking lot, weak and gray, like a ghost reluctant to rise. By morning, I had decided, whatever this was, it wasn't going to fester in texts. So I called her. No build-up, no warning, just hit the green button and waited. She answered on the second ring, her voice hoarse and too quiet. "Hey," she said, like nothing had happened. Like we were still sisters in the way little girls pretend. Like years of resentment and rivalry could be erased by one syllable. I didn't play along. "What's going on, Emily?" She was silent for a few seconds too long, and then in a voice that sounded scraped thin by crying, she said, "I'm at the hospital." That sentence, those 5 words, hit harder than anything I had braced myself for. My breath caught, my fingers tightened around the phone, and before I could stop myself, my old nurse brain kicked in. "Are you okay? Is the baby—" "There were complications," she said, her voice cracking halfway through the sentence. "They don't know yet. I started bleeding last night, a lot. They're running tests." Everything inside me turned cold, not out of vengeance, not out of satisfaction, but out of a kind of deep, old pain that knows too well what that sentence means. That bleeding in pregnancy is never just about the blood, that it's about the unraveling of something that was supposed to be safe, protected, certain. I'd been there, twice. Lost something invisible and precious in the sterile brightness of hospital rooms that never felt comforting, only cruel. And in that moment, all the anger I'd been gripping like a lifeline for weeks began to loosen, not disappear, but shift, take on a different shape. "I'm coming," I said, and I don't know why or how, but the words just came out, simple and final. Josh didn't ask questions. He just handed me my keys. I arrived at the hospital an hour later, hair pulled back, jeans, and an oversized hoodie hiding the fact that I'd been a bride less than 12 hours ago. Emily was in a pale blue gown, lying on her side, face pale, eyes swollen. She didn't look at me when I walked in, didn't speak, just kept staring at the blank space on the wall like if she looked hard enough, she could write a new ending into it. I sat down beside her and didn't say anything for a long time, just sat, just breathed, just remembered. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't mean to ruin your day." It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever heard from her, and it came wrapped in so much pain that I didn't know what to do with it. I wanted to say, "It's okay," but it wasn't. I wanted to say, "We'll be fine," but I didn't know that either, so I said nothing. I just reached out and took her hand, cold and limp in mine, and held it there, both of us pretending it meant something more than what it did. The doctors came in, young and kind and cautious, and I stepped out while they spoke. Later, she told me the baby was still okay, that things were stabilizing, but there were risks now, new ones, uncertainty, fear, waiting. The things every expectant mother dreads but rarely prepares for. We didn't talk about the wedding. We didn't talk about the post. We didn't even talk about the gender reveal or the chairs that had gone empty. We talked about pain meds and rest and follow-ups. We talked like two people who used to know each other but had forgotten how. When I finally left, I didn't promise to come back, and she didn't ask me to. We just looked at each other for a long, heavy moment. And then I walked out, the sun too bright, the day too sharp, everything feeling like a hangover I hadn't earned. Weeks passed. The fallout was slow and strange. Some family members reached out, pretending nothing had happened. Others stayed away, unsure of where to stand. Emily posted less, quieter now, more guarded. The baby was a girl. She named her Ava. I sent a gift, simple, wrapped without a note. She never acknowledged it. Josh and I settled into married life like people who had fought through a war zone together and now just wanted peace. We went to work, we cooked dinners, we laughed again. Not loudly, but it was real. And me? I stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. I stopped writing scripts for conversations that would never happen. I stopped trying to make sense of a family that only made room for one spotlight at a time. Tell me, was I right or was I cruel? Because even now, I still don't know.